This AI thing is just like, oh, a bunch of fancy things happening on the screen, which is something exactly I'm not a fan of. Good evening, welcome back to In the Khud. This is 28 June 2023, 6:17 p.m. and very importantly, I'm trying to do things very differently from now onwards. 7:15, I have to leave home for the gym because even yesterday it got up until 8 o'clock because I spent a little more time editing the thumbnail for yesterday's video. It looks so good. I mean, very rare instances where I've made a thumbnail and I really like it. I don't care so much about the thumbnail being clickable or all that stuff, but just looking at the thumbnails looks so pretty, like design wise. I just added like a Photoshop icon on top and like text at the bottom, stable diffusion, but it was very nice. So the point I was coming to is it got up at 8:85 and then I was like, because it's raining, I can't take my bike to the gym. I have to walk till the gym. By the time I would reach gym, it would be 8:30, 8:35. And then by 9, no way I could, because I had to do my legs workout yesterday. So I just dropped the plan of going to the gym. And this is a big problem that I have to anyway address, because from 6 to 6:30 till up until 7, I'm just doing some time pass only, which can be avoided. Normally, I'm not doing time pass. Like even today, I would actually be working on something, but I want to try avoiding that, like try finishing off all the full-time job work before 6:15 so I can record by 6:15 and just, as I said, leave by 7:15. That's very important. So having said that, today I have no time to waste. I am going to cover a few things that I did, again working on the Photoshop fill and stable diffusion creatives, 2 of them, and I also worked on a Deforum video, which is very interesting, which I'm going to work on tomorrow. It's going to be very interesting and exciting episode tomorrow, I believe, because I have an idea that I want to execute. So this first thing I want to cover is, if you see the background here, this I feel is definitively the best way to make a radial sort of gradient. So okay, weren't able to see this. I have just put a background here. Okay, I'm gonna delete this background and recreate this. So how do you recreate this? So come in here, you can't even see this, no problem, I got you covered. So come in here, say solid color, and you can't see because it's coming on top, so just hide this, and then you want to double click on it and pick this color, the dark color of the pomegranate over here, bring this down. So now you have like a solid color situation. Let me keep my keystrokes on just in case if you need it. Okay, it's actually not displaying like keys and backspace and stuff. I have to fix that in the settings. We'll do that. Next thing you want to do is come in here and select your lasso tool. Normally it will be at rectangular, so you take your lasso tool and hold down Alt and make this kind of an ellipse here, or however you want to do. Is also very procedural, so you can change it later. Okay, you do that. And why am I getting generative fill? Is this beta? Okay, doesn't matter if it's beta or not, this is going to apply anyway. And then you want to come in here and say new adjustment layer, curves. Okay, and then curves, you can break this down. Now it's going to look very kind of weird. What you want to do is you want to come into your masks here, and firstly you want to invert the mask so that this is the spotlight, and then you just feather this out. You might have to feather it out a lot, but yeah, that's completely up to you. And the reason this is the best way is because this is a shape. You can actually move this around and non-destructively just change. If you want to change for whatever reason, if you want to change the shape of the gradient, you can very easily do that. And you can even come in here and decrease the intensity of the vignette around. So that was one thing, a beautiful way to make gradients inside of Photoshop. I think, who says that? Photoshop. Unmesh from Pixel Perfect. Photoshop. Somebody says it very distinctly. Anyway, the second thing I have to show is Deforum. Is it open? Can I show it? Why is it not open? Stable diffusion. Okay, let me just show you the renders I've done, and then I'll pick on some important things that I, to be honest, couldn't figure out why that was happening. But yeah, I think it's from here, 28th June, from here. So the first one was just a test. I was trying to see if I can do a thing where, wait, can you see what part of the screen can you see? Let me just bring this here. The first test was just for like 50 frames or so. I was trying to see if I can put the values inside Deforum in such a way that I just get a continuous zoom, because from the tutorial that I watched, they were doing like a round thing, and for that we were putting values for rotation, X, Y, Z and everything. I don't want that kind of fancy thing. I just want a plain old zoom in, and I was trying to test if that can work, and it worked very nicely. Only in the end it got a little messed up. I think that was because of Ethernet being used on the system. So there are a lot of restrictions with Stable Diffusion. First one is it eats up your GPU like anything, so you cannot do any other GPU intensive work. Forget doing Blender or even using VLC Media Player for that matter. And it also gets affected if you're using Ethernet in the background, like you're doing YouTube. Just watching YouTube videos will slow down, and then your quality of images will start to get spoiled. So this was the second one. I think this was the more, because I had done it once, I was like, okay, that zoom in thing is happening. So this was a more advanced kind of approach where I'm just zooming in, and you're going into pomegranate farms, and then eventually you're gonna get to like juice. And you see, this is what I was talking about, the Ethernet problem. So like the images it's putting out here is getting worse as you move forward, because I was maybe watching YouTube or something along. Okay, then the next trial, there's nothing, so I was probably trying to figure out what to do. Then this didn't work, I think. Yeah, then this render is a more definitive one, where I started from the third prompt itself, not the first two prompts, because I had gotten the first two prompts. And even the last time I made a Deforum Stable Diffusion video, I did it in chunks instead of doing the whole thing once. So you move in here. This is going into pomegranate juice and bottles and stuff like those. This is something I'm actually going to end up using. Again, that zoom in, I've kept that as a constant keyframe value. And this is the last one where I was trying to do a zoom out kind of thing, but it's done more or less something very weird. I mean, I don't know if it's actually zooming out, is it? Now that I see it, it feels like it is zooming out, but I'm not sure if it is. This AI thing is just like, oh, a bunch of fancy things happening on the screen, which is something exactly I'm not a fan of. We'll talk about that as well. Let me just open Stable Diffusion and A1111. Some things I want to cover for Deforum, which were valuable. Okay, if you check Deforum here, you will see okay, I'm gonna come into Deforum and load my settings. So I made another text file called settings, and I'm gonna load all settings. Width at 1200, 1600, avoid this. This is a big problem, because it will run at like 1/4 speed for every single frame. And this, I feel, if you want to make videos effectively with this Deforum thing, you want to be able to generate results quicker. Even with my GPU, it is a 8GB RTX 3060 Ti. It takes a long time with this kind of config. So make it something like 512 by 910, and then you can upscale it inside After Effects or any other software. That's not a problem. Okay, importantly, what is it that I did different for the motion, like continuous zoom in thing? This max frames, everything you can change later. I did a 0, 0. So this is a key object pair. Translation X, I don't want the camera to move in X. Translation Y, I don't want to move in Y. Translation Z, I just want to move in Z. So what have I given here for key value pairs? 0, 2. At the 0th frame, I want you to move 2 pixels ahead in the positive. And it seems like when you're saying +2, it is going inside. So I think for that I have to do -2. Okay, makes sense. At the 100th frame, this depends on the number of max frames you're going for. At the 100th frame, I want you to go 50 pixels. Let's say pixels. I don't know how it is working, but as far as I understand from animation terminology, 50 pixels you go in. At 120 frame, 100 pixels you go in. This is how you get that zoom in. And rest everything else, rotation X, rotation Y, rotation Z will be 0. We don't need any of that. Okay. Again here, motion is this. Okay, that is fine. For coherence, as I had pointed out earlier as well, color coherence you want to be at none. Otherwise, all the images will be kind of smudged and weird. And if you have an init, which is like a starting image, then it will take colors from that image for all the succeeding images, which if you want that, cool, but I definitely don't want it. And the rest just don't mess with anything here. It's kind of complicated. Prompts 0, these are key value pairs. In the end, the last one, every prompt here should end with a comma, like inside double quotes and then a comma, and in the end one you shouldn't have a comma here. It should be just directly enclosed. Okay, in it, this allows you to add an image here, which will be a starting point. And from what I have understood, just avoid doing this, because the moment you use init or do something over here, it generates a very weird error which I could not solve. Like I could not understand why that was happening. So just avoid using that, because it doesn't anyway, it just fades out from that image to the next image. So what is the point? I mean, as I said, for color coherence, if you want to use the first image as a base for the color or any other property of all the other images that follow, then it makes sense to use it. For what I'm trying to do, you don't need to use it. These are a few Deforum properties that I wanted to talk about. The checkpoint that I'm using here is deliberate. Safe tensors, it's a good enough thing. Okay, so that was that. I think I missed out on the creatives that I made. So AI statics, these two I made, so 5. Again, the process is exactly the same as I showed in yesterday's video. You start with stable diffusion, you get something to work on. One thing which was different over here, if I show my layers here, it's a lot more structured in the sense that I was working with groups today, which is nice. So I can just shut all of this, and this is the image that I got from stable diffusion. On top of it, I added a teacup. Okay, as I said in yesterday's video, to give AI some context of what I want things to fill in with. Okay, and then this is the teacup that I got as a starting point with like Photoshop generative fill and everything. Now this teacup situation, I had to do a bunch of generative fills on top of that which is this group here, to fix this teacup. Like if you see, there are so many different layers of generative fill which are trying to fix this teacup itself. And then on top of it, I added a group for teacup color. Just add a color layer here, set it blending mode to color, and then you mask this much part out. Like if I was to select this is just masked out on top of the group. That is important because then you can add anything in here. You can add brightness, contrast, and just do things, and it will only affect that. No need for like hundreds of clipping masks. Again, the same thing for T color. You add it in a group for color, for curves, brightness, and color. Set it to color, and then just mask that thing out. And I use the original this thing as for like a color guide of sorts. So that's that. Again, the same process for the other one as well. That's all that I want to cover. One thing that I do want to show is this video that I was talking about. Now here, the Deforum videos that I showed you, there is this thing that we have to somehow mix this with the brand, like we have to somehow integrate this with the brand. So what I'm thinking about doing is I'm gonna model this inside Blender, which is gonna be fun. So I'm very well versed with modeling things in Blender. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna from right just get in the bottle, and then when the bottle comes into frame, we're going to do a very fancy kind of motion where the bottle cap opens up, okay, and goes out. The camera goes on top of the bottle and it's almost like looking down into it. And in that, we're going to have the juice. The juice, I'm going to make it through the displacement method, not like a simulation or anything, because who will do that? I don't know if it'll work, but maybe we can do simulation as well. Why not? So we'll think about that. Simulation or something of that sort. And then we'll go and look at the top. And then from that liquid, we'll start that. Like maybe zoom in, and then we do a clipping mask alpha matte inside After Effects, and something happen, and then eventually we zoom out of it, and then we close the bottle gap again, and then come back to the original frame. That's what the plan is. It sounds very interesting and fascinating. We'll see how that goes. So it is already 6:30. So that's where we are in life. Is there anything else that I have to document? Not pretty much. I think as time is passing by, inthekhud is becoming more and more about creatives and the things that I'm learning and doing, which is something it always had to be about my learnings, and it's getting less and less about personal life, like what time I woke up or some things like those. Because yeah, sometimes it's good to use this platform for myself as a journaling method where I'm trying to just untie the knots in my mind, and it's really needed sometimes, specifically in like difficult situations where I feel like, because I really don't have anyone that I can talk to, like a friend or anything, who will really listen to what I have to say. So this camera, I consider it that way. But now that life is good and mental situation, everything is pretty good, I think can have all the inthekhud videos focused on just creatives and stuff. And when in the flux or the dedicated channel for tutorials and anything, when that will have to happen, that will happen by itself. I'm not trying to force or like manifest things or anything, because it doesn't really work that way. Thanks so much for being in the inthekhud. I'll catch you tomorrow. Peace.